I want to tell you a story about imposter syndrome and a revelation that happened in my life. It was March 8th, 2020. It was a Sunday, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning. And I experienced the worst episode of imposter syndrome I've ever experienced in my life. I came through the fire unscathed and want you use it as an example to illustrate the notion of imposter syndrome and some background for learning as an adult. So I'll tell the story. I'm standing at my church with my worship team that I know all of them very well in front of a crowd that I know very well and had been in front of before. The difference is I have a bass guitar strapped around my neck and I had never played the bass in public before. And I distinctly remember the feeling of adrenaline that my brain was interpreting as fear. To this day, I don't know where the adrenaline came from. As I said, it wasn't the first time I'd been on this stage. I'd sung on this stage with a microphone several times previous, say many times. I was part of a rotation where once or maybe twice a month for 10 years I would sing. So, perhaps 100 episodes of being up with a microphone in my hand, singing to this same group of people with the same group of people. On this particular occasion, though, I had a bass guitar. I had done this intentionally. I had specifically asked how I could be more involved in the music ministry at my church. And the worship leader said, well, as it turns out, we could probably use some help on the bass. And I had received a bass as a Christmas present, and I'll tell that story in just a minute, a couple of years previous, but had never really done anything with it. So I spent a year and a half really trying to practice the bass and learn how to do it so that I could be in this position on Sunday morning, March 8th of 2020. And I had no idea that I was going to have the amount of adrenaline coursing through my body that I actually had. It was enough that at a very mature point in my life, a point where I shouldn't be having stage fright, I actually considered calling in sick. I actually considered not coming back on. If you know anything about church worship music, there are actually sets that we do. And you do some music and then you sit down and then you do some more music and then you sit down and then you do some more music and you sit down and everybody leaves. And there were plenty of opportunities for me to leave the stage and not come back, for me to go hide in the bathroom, making retching noises. But I didn't. And really, that to me shows us a lot about this whole notion of imposter syndrome. You may disagree that imposter syndrome has anything to do with what we have formerly called stage fright, which may be your term of choice for my episode with my bass. But I stuck through it, and the feeling is now one that I can recognize a little bit better, and one that I can wrap my head around a little bit more cleanly. But there's probably not a better way to experience a heavy dose of imposter syndrome than to be up on stage, intentionally with a guitar in your hand, plugged into a speaker system, and recognize that I'm not nearly as good as I think I need to be in order to pull this off without making an idiot out of myself. I had enough adrenaline in my body that I was actually, what does adrenaline do? Adrenaline makes your small muscles tremble. They actually, I'm told, run out of kind of blood flow. And so you try to use them and they don't have enough energy to do what they need to do because the blood flow is all going to the big muscles in your body. So all of those things. And here I am, I'm 55 years old, right? What am I afraid of? What am I scared of? So just thinking through that and thinking through, and now I can look back on that and I can say, I survived it. Is the new one going to be as bad as that one? I doubt it. But relative ranking of things, as we all do, is in the eye of the beholder. And so it was a great experience. It was one in which I learned a lot about myself. There's a little more to the story. I took the bass up intentionally for two reasons, not just to play for my worship team, although that was a big part of it, but also because I wanted to experiment. I saw this as an opportunity to learn a new skill from scratch as an adult. And I'm fascinated with learning and studying things. I had finished my PhD in business by this time, and I wasn't really actively learning much of anything. So, and this was a physical skill and not a college mental kind of skill. And so I was very excited by the chance to learn. And it taught me a lot about the learning process. It taught me a lot about imposter syndrome. It taught me a lot about adrenaline. I had to go and learn about these things after I experienced them. So it taught me a good bit and gives me some credibility when we talk about imposter syndrome, because I believe that imposter syndrome is a particularly natural feeling. I believe that, and not only is it a natural feeling, it's a natural term for the feeling. Because I was literally standing on a stage pretending to be a qualified, quality, skilled bass player. I didn't feel like a quality, skilled bass player, despite the fact that I had been practicing for a year and a half and learning the instrument and taking lessons and doing all these things. So, what then does the fear of imposter syndrome mean? Well, there's stage fright, and we all get this from time to time. I'm told that even the most experienced speakers still get some adrenaline when they walk out onto a stage. And of course, they've learned to manage that very well. But for the rest of us, we learn by being an imposter. We learn by mimicry. We learn by putting ourselves in positions where we have to behave as if we were already the thing that we are simply not yet. We have to be an imposter because otherwise we can't effectively do the thing we're trying to do. I have to pretend I'm a great golfer with a good golf swing in order to learn how to hit a golf ball. I have to pretend to be a bass player in order to become a bass player. I can't not hold a guitar and pretend that I know what I'm doing. I have to pretend that I know what I'm doing in order to find out where I need to learn. And if that's not an imposter, then I don't know what is. And of course, we need to believe that we can pull off a level of quality, whether we're totally confident we can or not. Because if we think that we're like with the bass, if I think I'm not going to be hitting the right notes, then I need to sit down. But we have to take these opportunities. We have to embrace the fear, if you will, the feeling of being an imposter. You know, my brain's saying, hey, Larry, you're not a bass player. You're 55 years old, dude. You're not a rock star. You look silly up here and you're going to screw up and everybody's going to laugh at you. And they're going to think you're a bad person and you'll never get the opportunity to do this again. And all of these thoughts are running through my head. And I think it's perfectly natural. And I think it's not something that we should live in fear of. So I wonder if we can reframe, and this is kind of what I learned to do through this experience. Can we reframe imposter syndrome as a stage of growth? Can we reframe imposter syndrome as a good thing, a thing that shows that we're trying to grow and that we're trying to become, and that we're trying to do something different than the things we've typically done in the past? Can it be a sign of courage for us? Can we be applauded for overcoming it, even if it's just in our own minds? And I think we can, and I think we will. You'll hear more as I've taken examples from this experience in my life. You'll hear more in episodes of the podcast and other videos and other things that I do, because I really did experiment on myself to understand how learning happens to us, and maybe some techniques for learning and those sorts of things. But I did want to tell the story. So now here I am. It's been almost 4 years since that very first terrifying day. At this point, I'm confident that I've performed with that team of people a little over 100 times now. And I wouldn't say that I'm completely comfortable, but I'm much more comfortable than I have been. It's a combination of making mistakes that people didn't beat me up for and not making mistakes. And you learn that your skill level is adequate to the task, and you learn where it's not, and you spend some time. I, of course, am still working on getting better at the base within that context and becoming an even more powerful member of the team, more useful member of the team. But I wanted to share with you my experience of hard, difficult imposter syndrome, so that maybe that would resonate with you. I look forward to sharing more with you on the podcast. If you can't find it, it's searchable on your favorite service. It's the Do Busy Right podcast. And you'll hear more of my learnings from experiences like this and other experiences. I'll leave it there for now.